I'm not letting it go.
I was changing.
If you're on the bottom, you have to risk everything.
Let's go get the son of a bitch.
Netflix just dropped the final trailer for Outer Banks Season 5, and buried inside 45 seconds of chaos, explosions, and goodbyes is a single line that changes everything you thought you knew about JJ Maybank's death. They didn't hide it well. They didn't even try. And once you catch it, you'll understand why an entire fandom is convinced this isn't a revenge story at all. It's a resurrection story wearing a revenge story's clothes. For almost 2 years, fans have been carrying JJ Maybank's death around like an open wound that never quite closed. Season 4 ended with Chandler Groff stabbing his own son to save the Blue Crown, and JJ passing away in Kiara's arms with 3 final words that broke the internet. Since that night, Outer Banks has said, over and over, that Season 5 is about grief, about revenge, about 4 friends learning to survive with a hole where JJ used to be. That was the pitch. That was the promise. And for a while, it was believable. But then the final trailer landed, and one single sentence tore that promise apart in front of everyone watching. Let's start with what's actually confirmed, because this isn't guesswork anymore. Season 5 picks up with the Pogues stranded, broken, and mourning, somewhere far from home in Morocco. They've lost the Blue Crown to Chandler Groff. They're being hunted by a group called the Corsairs, led by a woman named Dahlia. The Kooks back home have made sure there's no safe place left for them to return to, and somehow, in the middle of all of that wreckage, they end up forming an uneasy alliance with Rafe Cameron, of all people, just to survive long enough to fight back. On paper, it reads like a straightforward final chase. 5 friends, 1 villain, 1 object worth dying for. Simple. Except the trailer doesn't play it simple. It plays it like a setup for something the marketing team is desperate for you to notice, but not desperate enough to say out loud. Here's the moment that changed everything. In the trailer, Kiara turns to the group and says the legend of the Blue Crown isn't just about power or riches. She tells them straight to camera that the crown is said to bring back the dead. Not metaphorically, not as some vague throwaway myth mentioned once and forgotten. It's stated plainly, in the actual marketing for the actual final season, that this object can reverse death. And then the Pogues look at each other, and you can see it land on their faces at the exact same time it lands on yours. They're not just chasing Groff anymore. They're chasing a way to bring JJ home. Think about how deliberate that is for a second. Trailers for a series finale are not thrown together carelessly. Every single line is chosen, argued over, and approved because someone wants you to walk away with a specific idea in your head. If the showrunners wanted this to be a clean revenge story with no complications, that line about resurrection never makes the final cut. It gets left on the editing room floor along with 100 other lines that didn't serve the story they were selling. Instead, they kept it. They built an entire moment around it. Which means somebody, somewhere in that production, wanted you to start asking the exact question you're asking right now. Is JJ actually coming back? And this is where the show pulls its favorite trick, the one it's used before and clearly isn't afraid to use again. Outer Banks has already proven that death on this show doesn't always mean permanent. Ward Cameron was presumed gone, more than once, only to come walking back into the story like nothing happened. The show has a track record of using apparent deaths as narrative tools rather than endings. So when the final season suddenly introduces a magical object with the specific, stated power to undo death right after killing off the most beloved character in the show's history, that's not a coincidence anyone should be expected to swallow quietly. That's a setup, a very carefully built one. Now here's where most people hit a wall in this theory, and it's a fair wall to hit. Rudy Pankow, the actor who played JJ, has been asked directly about this, and in recent interviews he's been fairly clear that his time on the show ended with Season 4, and that he did not return to set to film new episodes for the final season. Read that again, because it matters. That's not a rumor. That's the actor himself, on record, saying his story wrapped. So if Rudy didn't go back to Croatia or Morocco to shoot anything new, how exactly does JJ come walking back through that door? This is the part where you have to slow down and think like the people writing this show, not like a fan hoping for a happy ending. Because there is more than one way to bring a character back that doesn't require the actor spending months back on set. A single scene shot in isolation, a brief cameo filmed separately from the main production schedule, a flashback, a vision, a dream sequence that blurs the line between hallucination and reality just enough to keep everyone guessing. A final few seconds tacked onto the very last episode, shot quietly, months after the rest of the season wrapped, specifically so nobody clocks it during filming and leaks it early. None of that requires Rudy to be a regular presence on set for months. It requires him for a day, maybe less. And an actor denying he returned to film new episodes is not the same sentence as an actor denying he appears at all. That distinction is doing a lot of quiet work here, and it's exactly the kind of technically true, carefully worded answer this franchise has leaned on before. Remember, this isn't the first time this exact pattern has played out behind the scenes of this show. When speculation started swirling that Rudy might be stepping away from the series altogether, the answers from the people running it were consistent, deliberate, and never quite a flat denial. Every question about JJ's death being permanent got a version of the same response. This was always the plan. This is what the story demanded. This is where his arc was always headed. Notice what none of those answers ever did. None of them ever closed the door completely. None of them ever said the word never. For an entire year, every official answer about JJ has technically been a no. Not one of them has ever been a never. That distinction isn't an accident. People who make television for a living choose their words with precision, especially when a surprise this big is on the line. And then there's the poster. When Netflix released the key art for Season 5, eagle-eyed fans noticed something tucked into the background that had nothing to do with Groff, nothing to do with Dahlia, nothing to do with the Corsairs. A figure, partially obscured, positioned up in the branches of a tree, styled in a way that a significant chunk of the fandom immediately connected to JJ. Official confirmation on that? None. But promotional art for a finale season doesn't get filled with random, meaningless figures. Every inch of that poster was approved by people who know exactly what story beats they're protecting and which ones they're planting as breadcrumbs. So let's put the pieces on the table together, because on their own, each one is debatable. Together, they start forming a pattern that's much harder to explain away. 1. The show has a documented history of resurrecting characters who were presumed dead. 2. The final season's central artifact is explicitly said, out loud in the trailer, to have the power to reverse death. 3. The Pogue's entire arc this season revolves around getting that exact artifact back. 4. The actor's public denial is carefully worded around returning to film new episodes, not around appearing in any form at all. 5. A mysterious figure resembling JJ has been spotted in the official marketing art. Individually, coincidences happen. 5 coincidences stacked on top of each other, all pointing in the same direction. In the marketing for the final season of the show, stop reading like coincidence and start reading like a plan. Now ask yourself the question the showrunners are clearly hoping you don't ask until it's too late to matter. Why would a production spend an entire year building a grief narrative, publicly insisting JJ's death was final, letting the fandom sit in that loss for 2 straight years, and then hand its own writers a magical object whose entire mythology is built around undoing exactly that loss? You don't introduce a resurrection artifact into your final season by accident. You don't write an object into your show's own mythology that can reverse the one tragedy your fans have never stopped grieving unless you intend to use it. Chekhov's gun doesn't get more literal than a crown that brings back the dead, sitting in the middle of a season built entirely around getting that crown back. Here's the part that really seals it for a lot of people watching closely. Think about what a real, guaranteed permanent death does to a final season structure. It gives the surviving characters motivation. It gives them grief to process. Fine, but it also removes any tension around the one outcome the entire fandom actually wants. If there's truly zero chance JJ returns, then the resurrection legend introduced in the trailer is just cruel. It's dangling something in front of a grieving fanbase that the show has zero intention of delivering, purely to manipulate views and headlines. Shows do sometimes do that. But Outer Banks has never been that cynical with its own mythology before, and burning the goodwill of the fans who carried this show for 4 seasons on the exact season meant to say goodbye to them properly is an enormous risk to take for nothing. So picture the alternative. Picture a finale where the revenge hunt for Groff and the hunt for the Blue Crown are presented as the same mission because they genuinely are the same mission. The Pogues aren't just avenging JJ, they're trying to save him, and the writers are letting you believe it's about vengeance because the actual goal, the resurrection, has to stay hidden until the last possible moment for the twist to land. Every scene where the group talks about revenge could be doing double duty, playing as grief and payback on the surface while secretly building toward the one outcome the marketing has already quietly confirmed is mythologically possible. That's not lazy writing. That's the exact kind of long-game misdirection a show does when it wants its ending to actually surprise people who've been watching it for years. And this changes how you should watch every single frame of that trailer going forward. Every shot of Kiara staring off into the distance isn't just sorrow anymore, it's determination toward a specific, stated goal. Every scene of the group fighting through the Corsairs to reach the crown isn't just an obstacle in a revenge plot, it's an obstacle standing between them and the one thing that can undo the worst night of their lives. Even the alliance with Rafe reads differently once you consider it. A character the fandom has watched grow and change over 4 seasons suddenly needed for a mission this desperate, this final. Maybe he's there for redemption. Maybe he's there because bringing back the dead requires resources, or access, or exactly the kind of reckless nerve Rafe Cameron has never been short on. Of course, there's a version of this where the theory falls apart completely, and it's worth saying plainly instead of pretending it doesn't exist. Maybe the resurrection legend is introduced specifically so it can fail. Maybe the Pogues chase the crown, get it back, attempt whatever ritual or myth the legend describes, and it simply doesn't work, because some stories are about learning that you can't undo loss no matter how hard you fight for it. That would be a gut punch of an ending too, and arguably a more mature one. Grief that doesn't get magically solved. A character who stays gone because that's what real loss actually looks like, no matter what a legend promises. If that's the direction the writers take, the resurrection myth becomes a lesson in letting go rather than a loophole for bringing someone back. That version of the finale exists too, and it would explain every single trailer beat just as well. But here's why the smart money still leans toward JJ walking back through that door before the credits roll on this show for good. Outer Banks has never been a series that punishes its audience for hoping. Every single time this show has taken something away, from Kooks vs. Pogues to Lost Fortunes to characters left for dead, it has found a way to give the ride or die crew a win by the time the credits roll. That's the entire emotional contract this show made with its audience 5 years ago. And a finale that ends with JJ permanently, irreversibly gone after 2 full years of grief, after a trailer that explicitly dangled resurrection in front of millions of viewers, after a poster with a mystery figure hiding in a tree, risks breaking that contract in the worst possible way on the last episode anyone will ever get to see. So where does that leave us right now, sitting here days away from the premiere? The official story is revenge. The official story has always been revenge, delivered consistently, delivered carefully, delivered by people who know exactly how to answer a question without technically lying. But underneath that official story sits a legend the show didn't have to include, an artifact the show didn't have to give resurrection powers to, and a marketing campaign that keeps quietly pointing toward the one outcome nobody in charge will confirm and nobody in charge has ever fully denied. The revenge is what they're selling you. The resurrection is what they're hiding underneath it. And if the last twist of this entire series really is JJ Maybank walking back into frame, alive, in the final minutes of the final episode, they will have pulled off exactly what they set out to do from the very beginning. They will have made an entire fandom believe he was gone for good, right up until the second he wasn't.